Unit 4. Today we're going to be talking about dividing rational numbers. So last lesson we were multiplying rational numbers, and this time we're going to be dividing them. So we're going to be dividing numbers like whole numbers that can be written as fractions. We're also going to be dividing fractions and mixed numbers and all kinds of things like that. So let's go ahead and look at how you divide rational numbers. In this particular case, we have 4 divided by 1/3 equals 12. So let's figure out, what is this actually asking you to do? Now remember, when we're dividing, we're splitting things up, we're dividing things up into pieces and things like that. So in this case, we have 4 wholes, and we are going to split it into thirds. So we're going to split each of these wholes into 3 parts. So since we want them to be 3 parts, we're going to split them up like this. So, in order to find out the answer, we're going to have to figure out how many little parts are we left with. So we'd have to count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that will give us our final answer of 12. So basically, though, if you think of it, when you're dividing by rational numbers, you have to flip this second number and multiply. So instead of dividing by 1/3, we're actually multiplying 3 because we flip these around, and you can see that 4 times 3 gives you 12. So kind of when we are dividing with fractions and things like that, it's not as much like you have a whole and you're breaking it down. It's more that it's like you're going to have a lot of little pieces left because you're breaking it into parts, not into wholes. So that is why we end up with like a bigger number when we divide than with rational numbers and fractions than a smaller number like usual when we're doing just normal whole numbers. Alright, we have a certain term that we need to talk about today, and that is a multiplicative inverse, or it's sometimes called the reciprocal. So in order to do this, reciprocals are 2 numbers whose product is 1. So like in this example up here, how I flipped the second fraction and multiplied, flipping it is what made a reciprocal, because if you multiply 1/3 times 3 over 1, you'll multiply across, you'll get 3 over 3, and once you simplify, you'll get 1. So basically, anytime you're flipping a fraction, that is finding its inverse. It's finding it's kind of like the opposite one, that when they're together, they make 1. And another example is 2/5 and 5/2, because you flip them around, and you multiply across, you'll get 10 over 10, which gives you 1. Alright, so basically, whenever you're dividing with rational numbers, flip the second fraction, which is finding the inverse, and multiply instead of divide. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some examples. Alright, these first 4 examples that we're going to do, we are going to find the inverse, or find the reciprocal. So we're not necessarily dividing or multiplying anything yet. We're just trying to practice finding the reciprocal, which is a pretty simple skill, which is awesome. Okay, so this first one, instead of 4/5, we will want the fraction to be 5/4 because we'll want to flip it around. Because if you multiply it across, 4 times 5 gives you 20, and then 5 times 4 gives you 20. So 20 over 20 would be 1. So that is a test to show that this is our reciprocal. Alright, if you ever are faced with a whole number, like -16, how do you find the inverse or flip a number that's a whole number? Well, first of all, you have to make the whole number a fraction, which, as we said, if you have a whole number, you just put it over 1. And that will be your fraction, because this is 16 wholes, which is what 16 is. And then so if we're going to find the reciprocal, we'll flip it now. So instead of being 16 over 1, it's going to be -1 over 16. So this will be our reciprocal. You can always test it by 16 times 1 gives you 16, 1 times 16 gives you 16, 16 over 16 is 1. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do our mixed number. So if we do that, we can't just flip this second part. We need to make sure that we're flipping the whole thing, because this 3 out here is an extension of the numerator, because it's saying we have more than 8 in the numerator. So that's why we have a whole number now. So that is why we have to go ahead and flip it back into an improper fraction before we flip the fraction. So let's go ahead and do 8 times 3, and that gives you 24, plus 1, which gives you 25. So now we have our new numerator, 25 over 8. So now we are ready to do our flip. So we'll just flip it around, and we'll have 8 over 25. And if you multiply across, you'll see that you get 1. Okay, and our last one of this type of problem, we have 6 over 11. So we'll flip our fraction, and we'll have 11 over 6. And if you get an improper fraction, you can always put it in mixed number form or improper fraction form. It doesn't matter unless it's specified in the directions. Alright, let's go ahead and look at these next few problems. This time we are going to apply the inverse and the reciprocal to our division so that we can flip and multiply instead of dividing. So we have 1/2 divided by 6/7. So in our rules, we take the second fraction and flip it. So this fraction we're going to flip around. So now instead of dividing, we're going to do 1/2 times 7/6. So now we can go ahead and multiply across. 1 times 7 gives you 7, and then 2 times 6 gives you 12, and it is already simplified, so we don't have to break it down anymore. So here is your quotient. Alright, in this example right here, we have 12 divided by 4/9. So let's go ahead and flip our second fraction and multiply. So we'll have 12/1 times, we'll flip this around, 9/4. And if you would like, you could do, you can cancel right now. So I see that 12 and 4 both share a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out. Well, actually they both share a 4. So I'm going to take out a 4. So 12 divided by 4 gives you 3. 4 divided by 4 gives you 1. So now once we multiply across, our fraction is going to be simplified. So we won't have to worry about the simplification step at the end now. Alright, so 3 times 9 is going to give you 27. And then 1 times 1 gives you 1. So we don't have to do anything to the denominator. Our final answer is going to be 27. Alright, in this case we have a mixed number and a whole number. So let's go ahead and change this one into a improper fraction first. So 3 times 6 gives you 18, plus 2 gives you 20. So we're going to have 20/3. And then let's go ahead and flip our fraction now. So 5 is the same as 5/1, so we're going to flip it now. And we're going to multiply by 1/5. So now I'm going to go ahead, I see that 20 and 5 has something in common. I'm going to go ahead and take it out now so I don't have to simplify later. So 20 and 5, you could take out a 5 out of both of them. You'll be left with 1 here. 20 divided by 5 leaves you with 4. So now our fraction is going to be simplified. So 4 times 1 gives you 4. And then 3 times 1 gives you 3. And 4/3 is your new quotient. Or you can turn it into mixed number form. Either way. Improper fraction or mixed number is alright with me. Alright, number 8. It says how many boards, each 2 feet and 8 inches long, can be cut from a board that is 16 feet if there is no waste. So this kind of shows you how this skill can be used in life. Is that if we have a long board that's 16 feet, we want to be able to break it up into pieces of 2 feet and 8 inches. So let's figure out how we can do that. Alright, so first of all, we have 16 feet. That's our whole number that we're going to be breaking down. So we're going to do this and divide it into these groups. So we're going to go ahead and divide by 2 feet and 8/12 inches. Now the reason why I did 8/12 here is because we have feet here, we have feet here, and in order to interact with each other, they have to all be in feet. So we have to change this 8 inches to a part of a foot because obviously 12 inches is a foot and 8 inches isn't quite 12 inches, so we're left with a part of a foot here. So that's why some things get a little complicated. So let's go ahead and now that I made this a fraction, I'm going to go ahead and simplify because I don't want to have to deal with anything later on. So I know that there is a 4 in each of these, so I'm going to divide it out. So 8 divided by 4 is going to give you 2, and then 12 divided by 4 is going to give you 3. So now I'm going to rewrite my fraction. So we have 16 divided by 2 2/3. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and change this into an improper fraction so that I'll be able to flip it. So I'll have 16, let's go ahead and multiply this out. 3 times 2 gives you 6, plus 2 gives you 8, so 8/3. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip it. Times 3/8. Now we can just multiply across. Now, since this is 16 and this is 8, they both share an 8. So I'm going to go ahead and divide an 8 out. So I'm simplifying now so I don't have to at the end. So if I divide an 8 out of 16, you're left with 2. And if you divide 8 by 8, you're left with 1. So we'll multiply across. 2 times 3 will give you 6. So 6, we can basically make 6 boards that are this long out of this whole board that is 16 feet, okay? Alright. If you have any questions, go ahead and rewind the video and watch it over. Watch it as many times as you need to try to answer your question and to get some of that repetition in there. If you have more questions, you go ahead and look in the book, and there are some examples in there that you can look over. And as always, bring some questions to me, and I'll be happy to answer them. Let's go ahead and do some on your own questions.
Alright, you have 5 problems to do for me. The first 2 problems, just go ahead and find the reciprocal, or you can also call it the inverse. For the last 3, go ahead and find the quotient, so flip and multiply. Alright, we'll see what you got back tomorrow.